Welcome to the travelogue of my trip to Russia, October 2nd through 18th, 2018, with a focus on food and accommodation. I started at my home of Baltimore on a Greyhound bus to New York City, where I then caught an Aeroflot flight direct to Moscow with a connection to St. Petersburg. The flight from Kennedy was delayed, and I missed my flight to St. Petersburg, and Aeroflot gave me a coupon for a free meal. You see me there at the restaurant. The food was fantastic. You can see the borscht soup, herring, chicken soup, rolls stuffed with meat, beer, and Papa Seed strudel. I arrived in St. Petersburg late on October the 3rd, went to my hotel downtown called Stasov Hotel on the First Line Street. Here's the road sign, which should show you how hard it is for somebody like me to deal with the Russian language. That word there that means line, well, it's in the Russian alphabet also called Cyrillic, and then below it they have the phonetic version, Liniya. My hotel was an apartment style, had originally been a 3-bedroom apartment. They converted into 3 hotel rooms. We shared a kitchen and a bathroom. But notice the clever ergonomic design, taking advantage of small space for a 4-person kitchen table. Excuse me. After a brief rest in the hotel, I went on the town. Well, I was just a block from the Neva River. It's about 1 a.m. at this point, and there's a photo of me looking across the river. My hotel's on a little island, and I'm on one side of the river, which is where the island is, looking across at what has now become the main part of St. Petersburg. There's a park next to my hotel, lit at 1 in the morning. Beautiful statues, well maintained. There's a bridge there on the Neva. Well, on the far right, you see the Winter Palace. But that bridge opens up around 1 a.m. to let traffic through. It's actually a famous event every night in St. Petersburg. Behind me, from the same spot, along the banks of the Neva, another beautiful building. Next to me, a monument lit 1 a.m. on the Neva River. The next morning, I headed onto the streets, and first place I came to, still again more or less a block from my hotel, this building along the Neva River, which proves to be the Menshilov Palace. It proved to be first Thursday of the month, and unbeknownst to me, but gratefully, the palace and the Hermitage are free to the public on the first Thursday of every month. Next, I went to the Hermitage. Beautiful place. This is the main stairwell. Awesome. About 100 feet from where I'm standing to the ceiling would be my guess. Halls, gigantic halls, loaded with beautiful art. Another hall, sculptures, art everywhere. Another stairwell. I was as impressed with the palace as I was the art, given my interest in buildings. Another room was full of art, but I'm looking at the ceiling, gold work in the ceiling, chandeliers. Here's some of the art that would be more typically called art, Michelangelo's Crouching Boy. Here's a room full of Van Dycks. Other rooms were full of Rembrandts, Van Goghs. Going again outside, this is the Palace Square. Outside, on the opposite side from the Neva River, the Hermitage, which is also called the Winter Palace, is on the Neva River on one side, and on the other side is this square facing another gorgeous building. The collection in the Hermitage is largely accredited to Catherine the Great. But the person who founded St. Petersburg, Peter the Great, he was much more focused on building his empire and relatively austere. This is a picture of his office in his palace. Very simple. Switching from museums and palaces, I want to relate a story about one of the most wonderful evenings of my life. In my hotel, the Stasov Hotel, I bumped into this fellow at the reception desk. His name is Alexander, and he insisted on taking me out for a drink, even though he barely speaks any English and I don't speak any Russian. He took me to two delightful restaurants, and then I'm not into taking photos in general, but the second one, he insisted on taking a photo of me in this motorcycle, which was outside the restaurant. As we then proceeded to hold arms and walk down the street singing. We stopped at a little store. He insisted on buying more alcohol and he was buying these things I didn't know why, and then he insisted I take them. Chocolate bars from St. Petersburg and magnetized memorabilia from St. Petersburg. And the next day, I took the train to Voronezh, not Voronezh, Moscow. This is the train ticket showing I left in the early afternoon, got in late at night. There's the map headed southeast. I had decided now to not be in the center of town, try something different. I wanted to, well, I'll just try something different. I'm trying to learn about Russians and Russia. So I figured if I go out almost into the country, well, in this case, what seemed like a distant suburb is 20 kilometers from the central train station, and you see here depicted on the map. And then I would walk about another mile from the more or less one of the last train stations on the metro outside Russia, outside Moscow. So I went from Konkovo, and then I walked to this apartment, but it's actually a complex of towering high-rise buildings, which is very common in Russia. You seldom see people in single-family homes, but in large apartment buildings. This is me outside my apartment. Well, it was an Airbnb reservation. I shared a two-bedroom apartment with the owner, an old woman. Very, very pleasant, but old, like me. Anyhow, the apartment complex was a pleasant place. Parks between the buildings, people and their children. There's another view, sports fields. Another view. It was turning autumn there, as you can tell from the colors of the trees. Now my favorite place to visit was the grocery stores. I went to grocery stores every day, just looking, touching, wondering. Russians love bulgur. There's all of that in this photo is different kinds of bulgur, and they love vodka. Every grocery store sold alcohol, beer, wine, and hard alcohol, different kinds of hard alcohol, mainly vodka. That entire wall of bottles are different kinds of vodka. They're also fond of a fermented rye bread drink called Klaus. And it's such little alcohol that it's sold like a soda pop. Just on the food theme, this is a food mall. You can't see the signs, it's too blurry, my fault, but there's a McDonald's and some other American chains, which are very American chains like Kentucky Fried Chicken and Subway, which are very popular in Russia. I had bought a meal in the grocery store and took it to the Airbnb and ate it, and there's in that plate you see the dark bread, the pierogies, beet salad again, sour cream. Switching from food to transportation again, the Moscow metros are beautiful. Clean, efficient, and beautiful. This is one of them with sculpture in it, another view with more of the same, this is the same metro stop. And I wanted you to see the people. This is a typical scene if I'd been on the street or in the metro, similar St. Petersburg, Moscow. And then I went to some of the famous tourist spots. This is the Red Square, adjacent to the Kremlin. That's Lenin's tomb where his body actually rests. St. Basil's Cathedral, also on Red Square. This is the Gum department store, also on Red Square. It's a luxury store, not your typical Russian department store, but this is a high-end store. Yeah, inside the Kremlin, there were many things to see. I have here just one photo, which is a famous cannon inside the Kremlin. This is a church on the street, not in the Kremlin, just somewhere nearby. Beautiful church, typical. This is me overlooking the Kremlin and the Moscow River and downtown in the background. I took a walk from the Kremlin to Moscow State University. It's about 15 kilometers. I hadn't realized, that wasn't planned carefully. I didn't know there was a Gorky Park, but most of the distance along the Moscow River on the side I had walked is a Gorky Park, a beautiful park. You can't see I'm in the park looking towards the entrance, but you see the kind of, it looks like a statue. It's actually a gigantic mast of a ship as a monument, maybe 100 feet high, actually in the Moscow River. And you see the flowers, a beautiful park. Clean, another view, this time I'm looking towards the Moscow River. Clean, beautiful. There were many statues, works of art in the park, massive, massive park. As I got closer to Moscow State University, it was nighttime. I left early in the morning. That's a picture of the main building of Moscow State University, taken from the Moscow River. That's that same building up front. An amazing building. There are about 5 buildings like this in Moscow that were commissioned by Stalin. I'll have a picture of another shortly. But this is the Moscow Financial District. This is another one of these famous Stalin buildings in Moscow, taken from a bus. I was taking a bus somewhere. Now I'm getting ready for the trip to Voronezh, and I'm at the train station. This is one entrance to the train station. That's another entrance to the same train station. That's looking across the street from my train station to 2 other train stations. Public transportation, including trains, is excellent in Russia. This is inside my train station. There's my train. Next stop, Voronezh. I was there the 12th through the 17th. There's my train ticket. Notice 275 rubles to go this rather long distance. I forget, 400 kilometers or 500 or whatever. In a beautiful train, only $4. There's the route headed more or less due south. That's the countryside from the train window. And there's my train station in Voronezh. That's me outside the train station. Notice I no longer have a hat, a scarf, or my coat on. It's much warmer. Then I walked, and you can see a route that takes to what ended up being my private apartment on Ulitsa Pushinskaya. It's the driveway to my apartment. It's an old Stalin-style apartment building, but quite pleasant for me. My apartment's there on the 3rd floor. Inside the apartment, very good. All the buildings I was in, the apartments of St. Petersburg, Voronezh, Moscow, they had this elaborate heavy steel doors with multiple bolts. My bedroom, a hallway to my bathroom, nice tub by my standards, a nice kitchen. I have a Wi-Fi, TV, very pleasant. And the interesting things, this was true in Moscow and St. Petersburg too. In the kitchens I was in, you can put your wet dishes and bowls, whatever, plates, cups, and they dry, air dry there. The water drips down to a tray below and evaporates. Very compact and efficient. This little couch rolls out into a bed in the kitchen. One of my meals. Across the street from my apartment, another park. People frequenting the park, old people sitting, young children on the playground. At night, the same park, well, there's a grocery store on one side of it. There's a fountain that's lit at night. It's the same little park next to my apartment. building. I had befriended some people at a local hotel called the Azimuth. It's an international chain of hotels, and they had a breakfast I decided to try. That's a picture of me at the buffet breakfast. These are some of the food items offered at the breakfast, and they're labeled both in Russian and in English at this international hotel. You see there are cottage cheese and sour cream and compote and fruit salad, watermelon. Watermelon was very popular. Um, and then jams, cowberry jam, strawberry jam, sweetened condensed milk, honey, sunflower seeds. Here there's salami and ham and cheeses and herring. That was the meal. I ended up, well, it was buffet style. That was my first plate. Um, Next, I want to share with you some photos of a grocery chain in southern Russia called Magnet. I got interested because I own shares in it. This is downtown. You see the sign there in the back. But that store is actually just a small store in the basement. This is another Magnet store in the suburb of Voronezh. And this is inside that store. It's a grocery store. Some of they're fond of soft, bland cheeses like cottage cheeses, fond of cucumbers, fond of potatoes, fond of breads, fond of paprika, fond of pierogies. At the hotel, there's a Dima and Lena who I was trying to get English help, and they speak English. They work at that Azimuth Hotel, and they wanted to be nice to me, and they asked if they could give me a tour of Voronezh, and I gratefully accepted. They took me. Here's one of the parks, which is famous for this boat, which is a life-size replica of Peter the Great's boat that he had built when he started his career in Voronezh. There's a church, another one of the Eastern Orthodox churches, very common in Russia. One night, by chance, I went to the Voronezh State Opera House. That's it pictured behind me. They were playing that night the Secret Marriage, an Italian opera, but sung in Russian. And it was intermission when I got there, and they let me just walk in and have a seat. There you see a picture of the opera live. There's looking back on the beautiful balconies. This is the Lenin Square outside the Opera House. I took a little walk further. Here's a park with statues and lights late at night. People not afraid to be out late at night. This is a Voronezh State University, one of the main buildings photographed at night. And then time to head home. Here's my plane ticket, Voronezh, Moscow, New York City. Then a bus, New York City, Baltimore. My heartfelt thanks to the wonderful people of Russia who were very kind and generous. I felt at home. The trip was for me an experiment in lifestyle. I tried to live each moment for the moment and found, being in Russia, that was possible for me. Any feedback is welcome. Thank you.